Sup psychology students, I'm Professor Girding, and today in I Love Psychology, we're talking all about Carl Rogers. Carl Rogers is a big deal. His theory and therapy changed a lot of people's lives, mine included, but more importantly, it changed the way therapy is done in the entire world. It's hard to see a clinician today that's licensed that hasn't incorporated some Rogerian practices into their work. And I hope after today's video, you have a similar experience where your life totally improves for the better. With that in mind, this may be the most important thing you ever learn in your entire life. Man, I love Carl Rogers and his theory and his therapy. But you know what else I love? Psychology. Your mother. A lot of people confuse Carl Rogers with Mr. Rogers, the guy that had the neighborhood and that childhood program. But people really couldn't berate you too much for making that comparison or mistake because they've got a lot of similarities. Both of them, arguably, really try to improve the world with kindness and acceptance. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about Carl Rogers' life and how he was born in 1902. Died in 1987. A lot of stuff happened in between those two dates. He was born in the suburbs of Chicago, Illinois, and therefore he is one of those rare personality theorists that is born in America, whereas most of the other ones are European born. But he had a lot of siblings. He was the fourth of 6 children. And here's the important part. His mother and father had very strict religious views. They forced their children to live by these views. For instance, there was no playing cards allowed. What? No dancing, no movies, smoking, definitely no drinking. Sex? Psh, you shouldn't even have sex, let alone talk about it. Why? Because all of these things, they're the tools of the devil. Oh my goodness, you don't want to be messing with these satanic things like cards and dancing. But he was a lonely child and he escaped into his books, even the dictionary and encyclopedia. This is what he read for fun. That's almost hard to imagine. Carl, my boy, what are you reading over there? I hope it's the Bible. What's that? Oh, no, Father. It's actually the dictionary. The dictionary? Yes. Boy, that doesn't make any sense. Shh, 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 shh. Not right now. I'm at Crucible, working my way to Crumper. Here's a quote from Carl Rogers in regard to his childhood. Now, this is a quote from 1980. He says, "As I look back, I realize that my interest in interviewing and in therapy certainly grew out of my early loneliness." He described himself as being easily diagnosable with schizoid personality disorder. Now, if you're not familiar with schizoid personality disorder, we definitely talk more about the disorders in our abnormal clinical psychology. Schizoid personality disorder is when you have a personality that seems to lack social relationships and being very solitary, being alone, a sheltered lifestyle, etc. And the way I remember this, little pro tip from Professor Girding, when I think of schizoid, it rhymes with android, and I think of an android that doesn't really need human interaction. I am an android. I have muted flat affect. I like to live solitary. But that's an oversimplification. You'll learn more about those in your abnormal psychology class. But we're talking about Carl Rogers, so let's get back to his life. He claims that he became almost entirely self-taught, teaching himself through the books he read. At age 13, he moved to a farm. There, he became fascinated in moths, followed them around. Wow, moths, oh wow. But also, he read about farming and learned about the scientific approach to agriculture, which really garnered this fascination for the scientific method. He attended the University of Wisconsin to study agriculture. In his sophomore year, he abandoned the study of agriculture to prepare for the ministry. Because remember, he had a very religious family and he wanted to please them. So figured there's a good way of doing that by going into the ministry. In his junior year, he spent 6 months in Beijing, China. But he came back with some of his beliefs changed. He went from this fundamentalist, orthodox Christian belief system that he was brought up with to more liberal views. And this was so disconcerting to him that he was addled with anxiety disorder, all those physical ailments. He had to take 6 months off of school for ulcers. He just had a stomach ache because he was so nervous. Why was he nervous? Maybe you've had this too, where you know that you have some thoughts you believe your family will disapprove of so much that you fear the consequences. Are they going to disown me? The boy was hospitalized for 5 weeks because of these ulcers. 5 weeks because you got holes in your stomach because you're so nervous all the time. I mean, poor Carl Rogers, he wasn't trying to tell his family that he had converted to Judaism or Buddhism or, heaven forbid, atheism. No, he's still a Christian. He's just not the same strict Christian that his parents were. Hey, Mom, oh, my stomach. I have some doubts that I feel you should know about. Doubts? What kind of doubts? Certainly you're not having doubts about Christianity, are you? Please, tell me. You're still a Christian, right? Yeah, Mom, of course. I'm still a Christian. Oh, my stomach. Oh, thank goodness. Well, you still believe in Jesus Christ, right? I mean, you can't be a Christian without believing in Jesus Christ, right? Of course, Mom. Yes, Jesus is love. You believe that Satan's real, correct? You still believe in Satan and his evil ways? Yeah, Satan's real. He's out there. He's a tempter. He's, whole pitchfork and hell and all that. That's real, Mom. Well, you don't doubt that non-believers are going to hell, right? You still believe that, right? Yeah, Mom, totally. Yeah, they're going to burn. Well, I'm sure whatever doubts you may be having are fine. Jesus loves you. As long as you have Jesus in your heart, that's all anyone can ask. Oh, thank goodness you said that, because I was starting to think that bright clothes and dancing might not actually be that bad. What did you... That's Satan talk! The devil's in you! You've got the devil in you, boy! Son, get out! Get out! So in 1924, at age 22, Rogers graduated from the University of Wisconsin and he married a childhood friend. He still wanted to be a clergyman, so he enrolled at the Union Theology Seminary in New York, and he transferred to the Teachers College of Columbia University and studied clinical and educational psychology. So he's getting into the psychology, right? And he earned his doctorate in 1931 at age 29. He worked as a counselor for underprivileged children in Rochester, and at age 38, he worked as a professor of psychology at Ohio State University. Go Ohio. In 1945 to 1957, he worked at the University of Chicago developing a counseling center, and he eventually became the president of the APA, the American Psychological Association, in 1946. So Carl Rogers rose through the ranks in the world of psychology. Big deal. At some point during his therapy and his practice, early on, he had to take a 6-month break. He had a huge sense of imposter syndrome, and probably you've had imposter syndrome as well, where you think you're just full of crap, you don't deserve what's going on. And why did he experience this? Why did he take 6 months off of his practice? Because he had a client he could not help. He's quoted as saying in 1967, "I'm deeply certain of my complete inadequacy as a therapist, my worthlessness as a person, and my lack of any future in the field of psychology." He wasn't just doubting his worth as a therapist and how good he was at his job. He was doubting his value as a human being, thinking that he was garbage. But after this 6-month hiatus, he had a discovery. Something that changed the face of psychology forever. He had the newfound power of empathy. And we're going to talk a lot about empathy because it's impossible to talk about Carl Rogers' therapy without talking about the power of empathy. And finishing up the story of Carl Rogers, in 1964, he worked at the Western Behavioral Science Institute in California. There, he took his newfound powers of empathy, his theory, his therapy, and tried to apply it to international problems. Literally, he had the goal of curing the world of conflict. This means he tried to reduce the tensions between the Protestants and the Catholics in Northern Ireland. Good luck with that. He tried to reduce the tension between the Jews and the Arabs in the Middle East. Good luck with that. Point is, he had this theory, he had this therapy, and he wanted it to actually work. He wanted it to change not just individual lives, but the lives of everyone on this planet. So it's my great honor to start talking about his actual theory. It's theory time! In order to understand Carl Rogers' theory, you have to understand a little bit more about what he thought would be a big deal. So when he was working on his doctorate, he came up with a study, and this is in the 1930s. He developed a method to determine which children were at risk. What do we mean by at risk? He wanted to find out what children were likely to end up in poverty, in prison, heaven forbid, dead. So what circumstances cause a child to not do well as they get older and enter the adult life? And he had several factors, including family environment, health, intellectual development, economic circumstances, cultural influences, social interactions, and level of education. But he wanted to throw something else in there because all of those are very circumstantially based, very environmentally based. So he also threw in self-insight. So what the heck is self-insight? Self-insight he described as an acceptance of yourself and reality. Basically, self-insight is someone who knows themselves, they know the world, and they're okay with it. I know me, I know the world. So Carl Rogers, he had to have a hypothesis in the study, and he figured that the factors that would predict children's best outcomes as they got older would be family environment and social interactions, which is a pretty safe hypothesis, that you need to have a nice healthy family and healthy friend set to inspire you to do better and remain healthy. But 10 years later, the results of the study showed he was wrong. It showed that self-insight was the factor that was most strongly correlated to better outcomes. What? He wasn't ready to accept this. He himself said, "I was simply not prepared to accept this finding," and the study was put on the shelf. But 2 years later, someone else found his study, replicated it with even more data, more power, which means they took more participants and researched it even more. And it showed the exact same ding-dang thing. Self-insight is the number one predictor of how resilient a child will be, how immune they are to the bullets of poverty, prison, death. Self-insight. But why? What is it about self-acceptance that makes it such a predictor of good outcomes? More so than family? More so than your social interactions? What? So what is it about self-insight that makes us so bulletproof? Well, let's talk about the actualizing tendency. What is the actualizing tendency? The basic human motivation to actualize, maintain, and enhance the self. This is the basic tenet of the school of thought in psychology known as humanism. If you're a humanist, you believe that every single person is good. Everybody has this actualizing tendency. When they wake up in the morning, they say, "I want to do better. At the very least, I want to maintain." The worst thing would be getting worse. No, I just want to improve, keep improving incrementally. There has to be something seriously wrong with someone who wakes up and looks in the mirror and says, "Today, I want to be worse. Today, I want to be awful." Some bad stuff has to have happened for someone to be saying that to themselves. So this is a basic human motivation, the actualizing tendency, according to Carl Rogers and other humanists. We all want to be better. Now, part of this comes into play with the organismic valuing process. It's a weird word, organismic valuing process. The organismic valuing process is the process by which we judge our experiences in terms of their value for fostering or hindering our actualization and growth. When we make decisions, what school do we go to? What classes do we take? Do we dump someone? Who do we date? What car do we buy? What job do we take? All of this boils down to, do we make the easiest decision? Or do we make the very hard decision? No, the decisions we make are the ones that we feel are progressing us, not ones that will lead to dead ends and frustration, and not ones that are just easy gimmies. We want to challenge ourselves so that we have an actualizing tendency going on. I'm going to do a little timeout right now. I, on the side, fancy myself a bit of a game designer. I design board games, tabletop games, and so you have to learn about game theory. And one of the basic concepts of game theory is that you, in order to have a fun game, have to have a continuum, and you want your game to be right in the middle of this continuum. What are on the sides of this continuum? You have frustration on one end and boredom on the other. You don't want a game to be so difficult and hard that it's frustrating, but you don't want it to be so easy that it's boring. The sweet spot is somewhere in between, ideally right smack in the middle, where they're having fun. Woo! Fun is in the middle. That is kind of the same idea with the organismic valuing process. It's actually a pretty inspirational concept. This idea that people, when left to their own devices, will choose what's better. They won't take the easy out. They're going to choose the thing that will inspire growth in others. Nice. It's time to talk about positive regard. Carl Rogers didn't use the term love. He used the term positive regard. Positive regard is acceptance, love, and approval from others. So it's more than love, because in Latin, there is a whole bunch of different words for love. There's fatherly love, brotherly love, romantic love. But according to Carl Rogers, positive regard isn't just love. It's also respect and understanding, this empathy and this belief that someone is experiencing the actualizing tendency. Sure, you can love someone, but not really like them. Well, that isn't positive regard. Positive regard means you love, respect, and understand this person is trying their best. That's positive regard. And according to Carl Rogers, what everybody needs in order to reach their most actualized self is unconditional positive regard. Unconditional positive regard. Unconditional positive regard. There is no condition under which someone will no longer receive this love, respect, acceptance, and understanding that they are just doing their damn best. Now, here's the concept that Carl Rogers said. If someone receives unconditional positive regard, eventually they're going to start exhibiting positive self-regard. Meaning they won't necessarily need someone else to give them positive regard. They're going to feel so safe and secure in who they are, they'll be able to self-generate their own positive regard. Don't get this confused with some type of arrogance or narcissism. No, it's just a very healthy sense of who you are. Again, we're going back to that self-insight. But if you give someone unconditional positive regard, they themselves will have self-positive regard, and then they are more likely to give others unconditional positive regard because they know how to do it. And then therefore, it becomes contagious, almost like a virus, but a virus of acceptance and safe places, because that's what unconditional positive regard really boils down to. Unfortunately, according to Carl Rogers, not everyone receives unconditional positive regard. In fact, unconditional positive regard is kind of rare. Ask yourself, did your parents give you unconditional positive regard? If so, you can't think of a possible situation which would stop your parents from loving you. Me? Did my parents give me unconditional positive regard? I was told very directly that there were things that I could do that would cause them to no longer consider me their son. If you do this, you're not my son. That is something that my father said to me. Funny thing is, I don't remember what that was. I don't remember what the thing was that I wasn't supposed to do in order to prevent losing my father's love, respect, etc. Because remember, it's not just love, it's also respect, acceptance, and understanding. If someone receives conditional positive regard, like most people do, unfortunately, they get something known as the conditions of worth. The conditions of worth is a belief that we're worthy of approval only when we express desirable behaviors and attitudes. And we have to refrain from expressing anything that may bring disapproval or angst from others. Basically, conditions of worth are specifically, hey, we love you under these conditions of worth. Conditional positive regard has these very specific conditions. Some parents doubt the power of unconditional positive regard. That's unrealistic, Professor Girding. You're saying that if I tell my kid they can have sex as much as they want, they can do whatever drug they want, they can commit any crime they want, then they'll do it. That's what they're doing. You're saying they won't magically do it? Nice try. Obviously, you're not a parent, Professor Girding. You were correct. Yes, I am not a parent. But I remember my introductory psychology class. My professor taught me that there's only 5 reasons children misbehave. 5 reasons. Number one, ignorance. The kid didn't know it was against the rules. They walk in with mud on their shoes, tracking it all over the house. Oh, I didn't know that we weren't allowed to bring mud into the house. Yeah. Number two, attention. If you're not paying attention to me, I'm gonna spill over this glass. Three, control. Watch how my mom freaks out when I spill over this glass of milk. Boop. Did you just spill over a glass of milk? How many times do I gotta tell you? Stop spilling milk! My kid's the devil! 4. Affiliation. You aren't part of the spilled milk gang until you spill a glass of milk. Okay, alright. Shh. You're in, kid. Last but not least, number 5 is revenge. Now the first 4 are just single sentence stories with ignorance, attention, control, affiliation, easy peasy. Revenge, there's a whole plot going on there. Someone feels wronged and it's gonna take probably more than one conversation to fix. But why am I talking about these 5 reasons that children misbehave? Because if we apply unconditional positive regard, do you know what happens to those 5 reasons for children? Defeats them, because when you give someone unconditional positive regard, it gives them a safe place, a place of acceptance. No matter what happens outside in the rest of the world, you always have that place you can come back to where you are accepted. This gives you the freedom to explore and try things out on your own. And the chances are, if you're giving someone unconditional positive regard, you're having conversations with them, because it's almost impossible to accept someone without also talking to them. So that conversation, this induction, is gonna eliminate the ignorance. But also, if you're showing unconditional positive regard, you're already giving them all the attention that they need. They already have a sense of their own control. You're giving them pretty much free rein, saying, you're in control of your life. No matter what you do, I'll still love you. You have the freedom to go and explore. And next, affiliation, they already belong. They belong with you. That's the whole point of unconditional positive regard. I accept you. You're not alone. You're in this with me. You've got someone. And then you're probably less likely to have stories of revenge because they have a place where they can come decompress and won't have this rage-filled need for vengeance. But you know what's really fascinating about those 5 reasons children misbehave and how they're defeated by unconditional positive regard? We applied the same concept to adults. Why do adults misbehave? And you know what we found? Same freaking reasons. Same 5 reasons. Ignorance, attention, control, affiliation, revenge. Boom! Brilliant. For real though, why does this happen? Well, let's talk about right versus wrong. What is right and what is wrong? Murder. Is that right or is that wrong? Hopefully you're saying, well, that's wrong. Easy one, give me another one. Wrong. Or is it? What about soldiers in wartime? What if you're protecting your family? What if you have a home intruder? Right versus wrong is totally subjective. It changes from person to person, from culture to culture, from time to time. What may be right now was wrong in the past. And what was wrong in the past may be right now. Right and wrong is totally subject to change. It totally depends in the context in which you're using that term. But now let's talk about truth and false. What is true? What is false? That is immune to time. Up is up, down is down. True. 2 + 2 is 7. False. These, no matter the context, situation, history, or culture, they are always going to be true. They're always going to be false. They're immune to it. Why am I talking about this? Because Carl Rogers talks about this. That's why in this video is all about Carl Rogers, damn it. And Carl Rogers talked about incongruence and congruence. What is incongruence? Incongruence is the reason why anyone does any of those bad behaviors. Incongruence means you're living a life that you've been taught is right without it being true. What? Have you ever been in a situation where you've been expected to behave a way that doesn't feel natural to you? Maybe afterwards you feel like you need to take a bath, or you have that cognitive dissonance going on in your mind, incompatibility of your behavior and your beliefs. Imagine something you really like doing, but someone tells you it's wrong and you're not allowed to do that anymore. How does that make you feel? Frustrated, ashamed, sad, emotional. And that creates a whole bunch of tension. And what do you do with this tension? Do you then sneak around and secretly do the thing you love that people are telling you you can't do? And if you can't do that, then what? What do you do with this tension? Do you just bottle it up? It has to let itself out some way, somewhere. And arguably, this incongruence of lifestyle, whether we're talking about sexuality, gender, morality, you name it, if someone says, you must be this way, and that way doesn't feel right, it's incongruent to who you are, it's going to cause you to lash out in ways. Maybe it's going to cause you to drink, to swear, to fight, to murder. Is Carl Rogers suggesting that perhaps all bad behavior may originate from incongruence? Well, maybe at least most of it. Sure, there's going to be exceptions and anomalies, but that's the idea of incongruence. And what Carl Rogers wants for everybody, and what I personally, Professor Girding, want for you watching this video, is I want you not to live a life of incongruence. I want you to live a life of congruence, a true life, living your true self. And that's what people mean when they say live your true life, your true self. Because then you won't have this frustration. You won't have this need to sneak around or act out, lash out, do all these other behaviors that could be harmful to others, but more importantly, harmful to yourself. I smoke because my father didn't love me in the right way. When you give someone unconditional positive regard, you give them a freedom to explore everything that they necessarily need to. And who is the best teacher? Who is going to teach you better than anyone else? The answer is life and yourself. Sure, I could tell you exactly how you're supposed to do whatever you're supposed to do, but you won't believe it unless we do that whole inception thing and you believe the idea came from yourself. Think of it this way. If the actualizing tendency is true and people are motivated to do the things that enhance their life the most, do whatever you believe you want to do. If you have the inclination, give it a try. As long as it doesn't kill you, hey, you may learn from it. And let's suppose you then maybe try a cigarette, not because you're rebelling, not because it's dangerous and, oh my goodness, I hope my mom doesn't find out about this. You're maybe smoking just because you're curious. You realize, that was gross and I don't think it's healthy for me. You're less likely to become a smoker. You're less likely to become a liar, a thief, a criminal, a murderer, etc. This is the idea of living your true selves. Some people may argue, but what if my true self is a smoking, lying murderer? Well, hey, if that's your true self, then great. Unfortunately, if it's going to infringe upon other people living their true selves, we've got places for you, and that's usually prison, etc. And that leads to the question of how can you show a child unconditional positive regard and still show them discipline? I can love you unconditionally, but still allow you to face the consequences. For the sake of time, I'm going to tell you the pop psychology of how you're supposed to parent with unconditional positive regard. You tell the child, hey, no matter what you do, I'll still love you. However, because I love you, I care and I don't want you to do all these unhealthy things. You know, if I didn't care about you, I wouldn't give a damn when you came home. But because I love and worry about your safety, growth, and happiness, I want to make sure you're home safe and not being taken advantage of. So please let me know. But if you break those rules, it doesn't mean I don't love you. It means I may need to educate you. And because of that, there's going to be consequences. The child psychology, parental psychology of it all is you almost set it up like a business meeting. You try to think of all the possible things wrong a child can do before they actually do those wrong things. So you say, all right, curfew's 9 o'clock. For every 5 minutes you're late, that's another day without your cell phone. If you're an hour late, why, that's a week without privileges. And that way, when the child is breaking the rules, it's almost more of a choice. Like, I'm an hour late, I know that I'm busted for a week. I don't have my phone, no technology, nothing. There isn't this doubt like, I think my parents hate me. No, they know that you love them. So it's as easy as disclaimers saying, I love you, here's the consequences, and discipline is you follow through with them. Hey, I love you no matter what. You just killed a heck of a lot of people. They've caught you and you're going to prison. I love you. And I think you're trying to figure out this world and you're trying to find your own way. And maybe what's congruent for you is being a murderer, but that's not compatible with our society. So you're going to prison. It doesn't mean I don't love you. I'm going to visit you. I'm going to write you letters. I'm going to wish you the best and the most healthy future possible. But at the same time, part of life is also accepting the consequences for your choices and your behaviors. Sorry. So if you receive unconditional positive regard, you can then become what Carl Rogers calls a fully functioning person. What the heck is a fully functioning person? This is like someone who's reached self-actualization, if you want to use Maslow's term. A fully functional person is someone who is living a congruent lifestyle. A fully functioning person is someone who is not living an incongruent lifestyle. However, a fully functional person is not what Carl Rogers called self-actualized. You're never self-actualized, according to Carl Rogers. No, you're self-actualizing because the journey is never complete. You're always growing, you're always improving. There isn't this end goal where you're like, made it, I'm done cooking, stick a fork in me. No. You're always evolving, you're always growing. It's a process. It's amazing. But here's a specific list for a fully functional person. Fully functional people are aware of all experiences. They live fully and richly in every moment. They trust in their own organisms. They feel free to make choices without constraints or inhibitions. They're creative, live constructively, and live adaptively. And they face many difficulties, and that's the important thing. It's hard, there's challenges, and that's what promotes that growth. That's that organismic valuing process. You don't want a life of nothing but easy decisions, because that's boring and meaningless. You want those challenges that bring you closer to frustration to promote that actualizing tendency. Yes, Carl Rogers. So let's end our talk about Carl Rogers as we talk about his actual therapy, because we talked about his theory, but how do we actually apply that in therapy? How do you help individuals become a fully functional person, that they themselves will have self-positive regard, then they will give other people unconditional positive regard, and then they're going to have positive self-regard and then spread it around. So like that virus of productivity and functionality, it's going to take the world by storm. Well, you need to start with what he called person-centered therapy. Why do you call it person-centered therapy? Sometimes also called client-centered therapy. Why? Why call your clients clients instead of patients? Because what is a patient? A patient is a vocabulary term for someone who is broken and in need of repair. But according to Carl Rogers, nobody's broken. No one's in need of repair. What you're doing is you're growing. You're not broken. You're just facing a challenge you need to overcome. So don't call them patients. And let's be very clear. Doctors are taught there is a power differential between doctors and patients. And that's a good thing. You want patients to listen to doctors. I'm your doctor. I went to medical school. I dedicated my life into telling you exactly what you need to do in order to physically become healthy again. So when I tell you to stay off your damn foot for 2 weeks, stay off your damn foot for 2 weeks. Listen to me, because I'm the doctor and you're the idiot patient. Oh, you looked it up on WebMD? You spent a good 20 minutes on the internet? And now you know more than I do, even though I got degrees on the walls that specialize in this thing, and WebMD interviewed me for this thing. You know more than me. Okay, good luck on your own. Okay, you stupid patient. You don't want that type of interaction when it comes to therapy and person-centered therapy. So there's 4 elements you need to know in order to appropriately administer client-centered therapy. As we go over these 4 elements, it's going to be a bit of a journey. Because when we first start, it's going to seem so simple, it's stupid. You're going to think, this is dumb. Anyone could do this. And how could anyone ever doubt they can't do client-centered therapy? This is dumb. But then as we move on, and by the time we get to the 4th element, some of you may think, what? There's no way I can do this. I can't do this. Is impossible. Who can do person-centered therapy? So come on, let's do this journey. Come with me as we go through these 4 elements and experience so simple it's stupid to I don't think I can do this. Element 1. Therapy is supposed to be non-directive. We already talked about how people listen to their own advice more than anyone else's. So the worst thing you could do is just say, this is exactly what you need to do. So if someone comes into Carl Rogers' office and they say, hey, I don't know what to do in this situation. What do you think I should do? How are you supposed to respond? I don't know. What do you think you should do? Oh my goodness, I had this crazy dream. Here's the dream. What do you think it means? What do you think it means? This is dumb. So simple, it's dumb. You're not supposed to give them direct advice. But let's be very clear. You are supposed to ask questions. This is good advice in general because inevitably someone, a friend, a family member, may come to you for some advice. And you know exactly what they're supposed to do. Susie, you should dump him. Duh. Frank, don't take that loan. Your kneecaps are going to be destroyed if you take that loan. But they won't listen to you. However, they will listen to themselves, but you just have to kind of guide them to the right decision. My mom's driving me crazy. How am I supposed to fix my mom? How do you think you're supposed to fix your mom? That doesn't help me. How am I supposed to fix my mom? Okay, well, let's talk about this. What are some possible solutions? Let's actually go through all of the different solutions that you can think of. Here's the fascinating thing. When you ask someone, what are all the possible solutions for a problem? They magically have tunnel vision and they come up with 1, 2, or 3 solutions. When in reality, how many possible solutions are there? There's so many freaking solutions that they don't see. So your job as being a non-directive therapist is to make sure by the time your client leaves your therapy office, they understand that they have more than 1, 2, or 3 choices. They have several choices. And with your help, you've asked questions and helped guide them through all of the possible solutions. And eventually, if you have proper reflection, they will go ahead and realize which of those solutions will provide the healthiest outcome. Okay, Susie, so you mentioned you can run away from your mom. You talked about you could burn the house down. And you talked about how you could murder your mom by burning the house down with her in it. Those are your only solutions you come up with. Certainly there has to be others. Let's talk about this. That's what we mean about being non-directive. Factor 2. You have to be genuine in your responses. Human beings are amazing bullshit detectors. Someone tells you something, that's bullshit. You can't bullshit your client. So if someone's telling you something you find very offensive, you have to be able to share that response with your client. But hopefully you do it in the healthiest, most respectful way possible. Otherwise, they're gonna know that you're being fake. Basically, replace this whole second factor of genuineness with don't bullshit your clients, don't be fake, be realistic and as natural as possible. So far, some of you are like, okay, I can do this, but let's continue the journey. Factor 3 is where we lose a lot of people. Factor 3, unconditional positive regard. Can you give that to someone who isn't your child? Can you give that to someone who isn't your family member? Can you give unconditional positive regard to a complete stranger, a client? Can you truly understand that what they are doing is their attempt, no matter how misguided, to become self-actualized? Or is that impossible? Let me ask you this. You become a clinician. Could you have a pedophile as a client? Is that possible for you? To show a pedophile unconditional positive regard and still be genuine and non-directive? It's getting pretty rough. But we haven't even mentioned factor 4 yet. Factor 4, you have to show empathy, empathic understanding. What is the difference between sympathy and empathy? Empathy is considered deeper than sympathy. Sympathy is usually when you feel sorry for someone. Sympathy is when you watch movies. If you watch movies and you see some character, something horrible happens to them, oh, that sucks. I'm sorry. I hope that character gets better. But empathy is a sharing. You are in that emotional context with them. So sympathy, someone's dog dies. Hey, sorry, bro, that sucks. Empathy, you imagine that similar loss. Oh my goodness. I feel for you. My heart aches for you. That is empathy. You have a client. It's a teenage girl. She's wealthy and she's upset. You seem very upset. It's my dad. That's what's wrong. Yeah, you've been upset with your father a lot in the past. Well, you know, I had my sweet 16th birthday recently, right? You knew I was talking about that. Yeah, your sweet 16th birthday. Right. And I was really excited about it. You were planning on that big party. Everyone's gonna be there. I had a whole bunch of plans. Zac Efron was gonna be there. Yeah, Zac Efron, he was there. He accepted the invite. That was great. But, oh my God. My father knew, right? Yeah. What I really wanted. And I asked my dad for a red Maserati. That's the car I wanted, a red two-door Maserati. No, you had mentioned the red Maserati, I remember very well. And you know what he got me? Go on. He got me a black Maserati, a black one. Ooh. He doesn't listen to me. So that's a scenario. Can you empathize with that? Can you feel with your rich 16-year-old teenage client? Yes or no? I think a lot of people at this point are willing to admit they can't do these 4 things, and they're definitely hung up on the empathy aspect. A lot of people say, I'm sorry, I can't empathize with whatever that is. Because here's the thing, it is possible to empathize with her without being a million billionaire, whatever, Maserati, Zac Efron party. You don't need that stuff. But a lot of individuals, when they hear that scenario or they hear people complaining about their problems, they're focused on the details rather than the deeper meaning, that experiential feeling that you may share with them. For instance, what you're hearing are the details of mansion, Zac Efron, Maserati, rich bitch. That's what you're hearing. But what about what she's feeling? Have you felt that before? Have you ever had someone with whom you were frustrated because they were withholding some sort of love from you? That you clearly communicated exactly what you wanted or needed from them. All I need to know that you love me is this. And what they seem to do is purposely not give you that. Maybe they even give you something that is that but corrupted. For instance, maybe you've had a conversation where you say, all I need you to do is say hi to me. When you come home, before anything else, just say hi. Hi to me. Maybe ask me how my day is. And when your partner comes home and you're waiting for them to say hi to you, instead they just come up. It's like they knew you wanted them to say hi and they could have just said hi to you, but they purposely didn't. Have you ever experienced something like that? If yes, that's the power of empathy. This is how you do client-centered therapy. So I ask you, and please leave it in the comments, do you think you could do the 4 factors of client-centered therapy or person-centered therapy? If so, which one do you think would be the most difficult? Which of these is the hardest? Let me know. And that's pretty much Carl Rogers. His whole theory, in short, we could probably just delete this entire video and talk about the idea of contagious, unconditional positive regard. That is at the core of all of everything Carl Rogers. This idea that you can fix issues, problems, potentially the world with empathy and understanding. I would even argue in movies, the most entertaining movies are the ones where all characters are worthy of empathy. Even if they're a villain, you understand where they're coming from. So be honest. Do you like Carl Rogers' theory? Do you like his therapy? Do you think it'd actually cure any of the world's problems? Maybe your own problems? Do you think you're more likely to give yourself unconditional positive regard? Are you likely to give others unconditional positive regard? Are you starting to realize that killing someone with kindness might actually be a viable strategy? I want to know because I really love talking about that stuff. I really hope they subscribe, like, share this video with everyone. I don't know, I'm not really good at marketing, but you know what I am really good at? I'm really good at talking about Carl Rogers and psychology because I love it. I love psychology. Thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out. I really hope that you live a life that is congruent with yourselves, even for the most selfish reasons, because if I ever bump into you, I want you to be a happy person so we can have a happy time together. Hey, have fun, everyone. I love you unconditionally, and I love psychology.
Your mother.